screen first. Yeah. So in this episode, we'll be discussing about the data. Well, data is pretty much everywhere. It's really important, especially in testing, and we will try to understand why and see how we can help our users to do this and easily for testing. So to start, I thought it would be maybe useful to have a very quick refresher about one test is a portfolio, is a set of tools dedicated for testings. We are basically addressing three different important kind of testing. The first one is around UI testing. So whether you are using, for example, Windows desktop applications or browsers or mobile application or even mainframe terminals like vintage green screen stuff. As soon as you are considering testing your application through its UI, then HCL1 Test UI is the component that is dedicated for this, right? So you can test browsers, apps, and all that sort of thing, even mainframe, as I say. Associated with this is API testing. It's all about triggering and validating systems API across a very large number of protocols. Again, it's going from easy and regular HTTP, HTTPS, and web services, whatever, things like this classical, but up to mainframe protocols like KICS, like IMS, and all that sort of things, which are much more exotic. And one of the interesting things we can do, we can associate the UI test made by HCL1 Test UI with an HCL1 Test API test together into a compound test. So that, for example, you can do an end-to-end testing, meaning that you can have, for example, a web page where you would fill some data into this web page and click the submit button at the end, verifying that the UI is behaving properly. But associated with this, you can write an API test that makes sure that the data that should have been written when you click submit in the browser, there is something that must be happen on the backend side, for example, in the database, or data must have been modified or must have been created, something like this. So you can associate those two tests together in the same executable unit, which would be a component test, to make an end-to-end test. So not only you will be verifying that the UI is behaving properly, but also at the backend level, it does what it should do, right? Performance testing, we've been discussing this in the previous mini webinar. It's all about creating a realistic load on your system and track requirements and help to analyze the root causes of any issues you might find here. So we have basically having the three main testing capabilities. Associated with this, we have two very interesting things, tools, I would say, environmental tools. The first one is around the service virtualization. It allows you to make stubs very easily. You might have to do stubs because you want to decompose the system, or when you do the test, you have to stub some external dependencies, things like this, or you want to stub something which has a cost, for example, which has a fee associated with. Anyway, any kind of need like this can be addressed by service virtualization. And the last one, which is the one we're going to talk about now, which is around the test data fabrication, right? So the test data is really important for testing, not only for performance testing as we might have seen in the previous webinar, but for all testing. So it's used basically. As you can see, a performance testing platform is here. Obviously, it's used. Data is important when you do performance testing because when you run a scenario, you connect to a system, you do a purchase, you place an item into a cart and do a checkout. You don't want when you want that to be run in parallel by 10,000 virtual users. You don't want those virtual users to use the same credentials and look for the same items. So all this data needs entries. You need a big data table to be able to make your data variable. But it's also important for API and UI testing, because, for example, this is the only way you could, for example, have a very good functional coverage, make sure that you're covering your applications properly and testing it in all the cases. Usually organizations are having production data and usually can't be used because it might contain sensitive data, because it might not be available the day you want to run a test, because the data is too large for testing, or because you're not covering all the functional scenario you want to cover. So that's why generating data is important for testing activities, and I'll demo you just now what we've done to help our users. So I'll go to my platform. So the data fabrication capability is integrated into our offering, which name is HCL One Test Server, which will soon be renamed to HCL DevOps Test Hub. I'll move to my project and move to the authoring data section, where I could say I want to create a data definition. So I'll provide a name, my data definition here, and place it here, for example. Next, how do you want to start? So I can create this data definition, which basically is my data model, by importing from an existing data set or importing from a CSV file. I'll start with an empty one. So here, it creates this empty data definition for me. I have to give, I'm given this empty white page, and the first thing I need to do, for example, is I need a title, then I need a first name, then I need a last name, might need something like an address, an email, for example, and for example, a payment information or whatever, something like this. So that's the structure of the data I want to have. And for each of those fields, I need a generator. I can pick up those generator from the catalog. So for example, the title would be something like an enumerator. And this enumerator, I want something like Mr., Mrs., Doctor, whatever. I can add some other things. The first name, it would be a name, first name. The last name, it would be also a name, would be a last name. The address would be, for example, an address, and the email would be, for example, what I can do is a function. And typically, it would be a first name plus point a last name plus at mycompany.com, for example. And the payment information would probably be a regular expression. And for this regular expression, I want to create two configurations, for example. I want a Visa number with a specific regular expression I'm going to use, this regular expression for Visa numbers. And the second configuration would be a MasterCard numbers. And for these, I would use that regular expression. Okay, I'm done. I can preview this. Title, first name, last name. Well, it looks pretty good. So I can save this stuff simply, I click on save. This is populated, and then I can very easily, once in save, generate some data very easily, thousands of rows. The seed is something which is optional. And I can download this, right? So it's starting, or I can directly, ask for a new data set now. My data set, place it here, click on next. How do I want to start? I want to use the data fabrication I just did. My data definition, I want to generate thousands of rows with headers. And then I click create, and then I'm done. I just can use this data set. So that's pretty much how, as you can see, it's really easy to cover these data definitions, just drag and dropping data generators. I have the capability to enhance the catalog by custom generators like this, so that I can reuse them wherever I need, and that's a really nice way to go further. Yeah, and to build up. I can build up any new catalog, any new generator, place them in the catalog.